We worked together to begin to create the shapes. And what's interesting about this banner is that the shapes have been created by individuals representing groups, but then they've been publicly sewn. So there's been layers of kind of collective action. How to work on the banner, the process of it was decided as we went along. So there's no one with a plan. There was nobody who said, this is what it's going to look like. All of our discussions were, what is it possible for me to do? Can I sew? Can I draw? Can I make? And lots of people couldn't do any of those things, or could do one of those things really well, or something else not very well. And so what can I do? And then how will what I decide to do fit in with what somebody else is doing? And then how should we organise the shapes on the canvas? So we had a series of really interesting discussions. One of them was, but should we keep the colour scheme? Which we didn't, as you can see. Should we keep Picasso's colour scheme? Should we keep the integrity of his shapes? How big should the banner be? Should it be to size? Would that be possible? And so there's a memory of us when we decided the size, having projected an image of Picasso's Guernica onto a wall, trying to work out then what size should the shapes be. And we worked out by how many people could hold a banner, a piece of fabric. So the banner is actually related to the size of the human form on a protest. It's about the size that you could walk across a road with. So there are all these decisions that unfolded collectively. And what's amazing about this piece is no one person could do it. One person could do it, I don't think, or maybe they could, but it wouldn't be the same, and it wouldn't look the same, because in every shape and in every stitch are these series of decisions that we made together.
We had to bring the light bulb further down over the horse's head, and that prompted some really interesting discussions about what the light bulb represents. Because for some of us it represented the hope for truth, for things to be brought into the light, a light shining on the truth. However, for others of us it represented the torture, the light, the permanent light in the torture chamber, in the interrogator's torture chamber. So that was very, very interesting for us to consider. And we didn't make up our minds, which is good, because you can keep questioning and discussing without necessarily making up your mind and having a dogmatic, fixed decision. And I think that's what's great about the whole of this banner, that it's a process rather than a fixed fact.
This figure is quite large and actually quite difficult to think about. Some of the smaller shapes, in some ways, they're sort of easier. She occupies a big space on the canvas, and so she's quite important in terms of holding the meaning of the piece. And it was worked on by a representative of my Migrant English Project, Carol, and Carol worked on it really hard and it became very attached to her. It's really interesting how people form attachments to the shapes they're working on. And we had this long debate about the extent to which she was a figure of protest, or she was, and how to represent that. So a figure of protest, or a victim, or somebody struggling against a fascist regime, or an activist now. So it was about how we renegotiated Picasso's figure in a contemporary political context. So we thought about a number of things collectively, and one of them was about protest badges, which are ubiquitous in terms of, a bit like the T-shirt, it's a kind of sign of political activism. And Carol was really taken with that. And so I remember we talked about whether or not a badge should be pinned or how to do that. And Carol produced this amazing array of different kinds of political campaigning badges. They were quite beautiful, but what they raised was for us and for the collective was a problem about how these generic and universal shapes all of a sudden looked too located in one context or too representative of one campaign, and not the more universal values of peace against war, of freedom against aerial bombardment, of equality between people against racism and fascism. So some of the meanings or the reason that Picasso's Guernica has lasted is the way in which it can catch hold of universal values. So some of those universal values were a little bit lost. And so the badges are actually still there. They're still there on the woman, but they have been covered in the sense that she has been returned to a more universal context. Now, for us, it was a really big decision about, do you cover things up? Do you write things out of the banner? And we did think about banner making and the way in which banners are made and remade and reused and mended. And so we thought that's okay, that's fine, it's fine for it to have a life, that's something that could be important.